I called my dad, who's a physicist, and I asked his advice, and he's like, oh, you sent a box of water into space? It froze immediately and then turned into a comet as it came down. And I was like, damn it, it's even worse.
Can you imagine if a plane hit that and you caused some sort of like international incident?
Even the Apollo program had their disasters in the beginning.
Why choose this as our goal?
Does anyone remember how many tries it took to do that?
A lot.
There's a lot of time out of the office.
Yeah.
It took you forever to find the camera is what I remember.
Well, the first two were lost forever.
Forever.
First two.
Yeah, we never found
Well, can we start at the beginning? What made you guys even think to do this?
I think it was Mason really hard charging.
I have the perfect marketing stunt.
Didn't he pitch this idea like years before it ever happened, right?
Lots of times.
He
I
beat
think there
Tom
was a
down
Red Bull.
finally, and Tom was just like, all right.
There was like a Red Bull video where it was a dude jumping off a platform that was like at that height. So Mason was like that, but shorts.
The first time we sent it, we didn't think through a lot of things. And so when it came down, it kind of came down like a meteor. And because the balloon burst at about 100,000 feet, and then the thing cascaded to Earth, and then the tracking device was destroyed on impact. And we hope it didn't land like on a car going down the highway or something, but I don't know. We also knew it'd be incriminating because our faces were on the beginning, like holding the camera.
Yeah. Where did it launch from?
The last one we did, we launched in Gilroy. We had to do a lot of sciencing for this, but we had to look at prevailing winds in different parts of the coast. And up by San Francisco, the winds are really strong, so it blows at like 200 miles inland. But we looked at the winds in Gilroy. It only came down about 5 miles away from where we launched it from. When we launched it, we legitimately, no one could remember if we turned the camera on or not.
Yep.
I remember
and we
that.
were terrified because we thought, if we go and get this thing, and we finally made it work, and we didn't hit record. This was on a Friday. We said, we're not going to tell anyone. We're going to do this again on our own dime, and we're going to say it worked on Friday. Because it would have been humiliating, especially because we had to beg to do it a second and third time, which I would like to say, even the Apollo program had their disasters in the beginning.
I feel like the video is so cool. Like watching it again, you're like, dang, this is actually a rad video. And no one knows how like painstaking it was to pull it off.
All the conspiracy theorists will say it's faked.
Yeah.
You can tell it's fake.
Phil, how much does something like that cost?
If you include the loss of a couple of GoPros, and we had to use one of those huge, like 4-foot tanks of helium. Each attempt was like $300. I remember Tom was not thrilled about that.
I remember you showing me in like an outtake video after you guys are like searching around in the bushes for it and you end up finding it. There's like a
yeah, that's
video
right.
of you guys
Mason
like, oh my
cried.
God, we found it.
Yeah. Well, it landed on a private ranch, right? You just had to trespass to retrieve
There was
it.
some very aggressive signage telling us not to enter that ranch.
You got permission from the U.S. government to use that voiceover, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, we always get
From
permission.
the Kennedy family estate.
Yeah. Was there people at the park when you guys were launching it off, Phil?
There were several different youth soccer programs going on. It was pretty crowded, actually. And then we waited until the practice was over. The balloon, it's huge. Like it's a big weather balloon. So it kind of makes a scene.
I remember watching that on also a giant screen. And can't you like see sort of like ice, like it's starting to freeze on the camera?
The camera shut off when it reached its zenith because it was too cold up there. The tracking device only works if the antenna is pointing up. So we thought a good idea would be we'd make a water gimbal for the tracking device, and we like strapped a float to the top of it. We wrapped it in plastic, and then we put it in a box that was filled with water. So no matter what happened to that box, it would always be pointed up when it landed. And we sent that into space. This is the second attempt. And we're like, here we go. Like, this is gonna be great. And then the same thing happened. Like when it came down, we lost tracking and we couldn't figure out what happened. And so I called my dad, who's a physicist, and I asked his advice, and he's like, oh, you sent a box of water into space? It froze immediately and then turned into a comet as it came down. And I was like, damn it, it's even worse. So the third time we did it, we used antifreeze, and then we sent it up. We used the water gimbal again, and that worked.
Tom would be like in meetings, and then he would come out and be like, what's the status of this? They're like, and he'd be like, okay, just keep me updated on what's going on.
We're testing antifreeze.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Great.
Do you remember the contraption that Mason built? Was huge too, to hold the shorts out like that.
Yes.
And then the FAA has a limit to the weight that you're allowed to do this with. until you need a certain license.
At least we looked at that.
We read that information.
Can you imagine if a plane hit that and you caused some sort of like international incident?
Hey, what if it didn't come right back down to where, like, I know you'd go to try to find it, but like you would lose all that footage, right? If you could not find the GoPro.
So the first two, we did lose the footage. The first two went to space. We just never recovered them because that was the thing. It was like, it's on a memory card. Like if we don't get it back, like this never happened. So
yeah.
I think one of the only times I've ever seen Mason cry is when we actually got the footage back and he watched it in the car to make sure it worked. We also had to run. He had a flight to catch. And so once we found it, we had like minutes to get back to the car. And we were running back down this dirt path and we saw like tarantulas and stuff. It was wild. And then we got back to the car. I thought I was going to like legitimately have a heart attack because it was like so hot and we'd been sprinting like a mile down a mountain. And then Mason, we got the footage out and then Mason's watching it and he's crying. He's like bursting into tears.
And a crazy rancher was chasing you in a truck.
It was one of those signs that said like trespassers will be like shot on sight or something. And we were like, oh, okay.
Sure.